Hello, and welcome to this Higher Admin and IT revision support session. My name's Mr. Vosser, and I'm really excited to spend the next 45 minutes talking through some tips and some thoughts about how you best prepare for your Higher Admin and IT exam. So, we're going to be focusing on that exam component. But of course, while catching today's video is important part of your study, it's obviously really important to be working closely with your teacher or the person responsible for delivering your course to make sure you've got all the revision materials and support from them as well. So this is really just a package of support that you can be accessing to help prepare you for that examination. So let's have a look at what we are focusing in terms of our learning intentions for today. Well, we want to learn how to apply our knowledge in answering questions for the theory element of the admin and IT higher qualification. And we're very much focused upon those theory questions that you're going to see in the exam. And what's absolutely key to being able to answer those successfully is, of course, being able to recognize the command word being used in a question. So picking that out and then knowing how to structure your answer appropriately so that you can maximize the number of marks that you have available. And ultimately, you want to convey the right information in the right format so that it makes it nice and easy for the person marking your exam, makes that job for the examiner really easy so they can award you the maximum amount of marks and you can get full credit for all that knowledge, all that understanding that you've developed over your time studying admin and IT. Of course, thinking about our exam in general, I think there's just some pretty general top tips that I would be suggesting to you anyway, and that's making sure you take the time to read the question. And that's yes, picking out the command word, but also picking out the context or the key pieces of information that it's asking you to focus in upon, and then making sure you fully understand what you're being asked to do. I know sometimes in an exam you can kind of have peaks and troughs in terms of questions you feel you can answer, and then you can come up against barriers which are quite tough, and you've just got to try and manage that mindset the best you can as you go. So the kind of more resilient you can be. If you find a question difficult, well, that's fine, move on, give the questions that you can do a go, and then if you've got time, go back to those ones that you found more difficult. And that leads me on nicely to this idea of making your time count. So of course there's going to be some bits which you can power through. There's going to be other bits which you're going to have to take a bit more time to think about how you're going to structure the answer, think about what the key points the questioner are looking for. But those key points, we want to make sure we're keeping our answers clear, they're concise, they're succinct. So, we're not looking to waffle on a lot. We're looking at getting nice, clear, concise points down. So sometimes spending a minute or so thinking about how you're going to answer the question and what that structure, that answer is going to look like before you start writing actually saves you time in the long run, because you've got a structured thought in your head about what information, what details you want to include in the response that you're going to give. So managing that is really important. And I'd say that's probably just general exam advice, which is a little bit personalized to the admin and IT qualification. But I know that for you and your preparation, the more past paper questions you've done, the more familiar you are with the range of questions, the range of command words, and the types of content that they'll ask you, the better prepared you are. If you're sitting this exam in 2022, then of course there's been some adjustments to the program, and some additional guidance. And there's another video available that provides specific guidance to the year. But there's also general questions in there which have been picked from past papers, which are different to the past papers in this video. So you can always go and tune in and just pick out the past paper bits. And if you're watching this in the future, then you can ignore the bits about the 2022 exam, but still benefit from working through some past paper questions. So we'll start off by looking at and talking about the command words and the structure of command word answers that we're going to need to have. So one of our command words is the compare question. So for compare questions, candidates, that's you, must demonstrate knowledge and understanding of the similarities and or differences between things, features, methods, or choices. So it doesn't have to be written as a comparative sentence, but you do have the ability to be able to talk about one element that you're being asked about, and then you can talk about another element and how it is similar or different. And I guess that's the key point there. You're clearly stating what is similar or the same about the two elements you're talking about, and where are your clear differences. And you're going to get 1 mark for each accurate point of comparison. So if you're telling me about something and then you're telling me about something else, and you're saying that those two bits are either similar or different, you get 1 mark for doing all of that. If you just tell me about something and then don't tell me about the other element, then you can't get the marks. You've got to make sure you're being really explicit with the two aspects that you're comparing, and how that comparison is either a comparison because they're similar or a comparison because they are different. So taking the time to structure that correctly is really important. The other command word we've got here is the discuss command word. So for discuss questions, candidates must make accurate, relevant points that are more than just naming the concept or naming the method or naming the features. You've really got to provide some detail, and there has to be an element of discussion within each point. So you're building up out your answer, and you're giving detail and an explanation behind it. So you're only going to get the marks there if you've developed your answer on. You're going to get 1 mark there for each discussion point that makes. And of course, the question will tell you how many marks are available. I think it's important to know that this command word information has come from the SQA markers mark scheme, so it's publicly available for you to go and see on any of the mark schemes. And marking that happens is always positive. So markers will always look to award you marks based upon what you have done. So you're going to accumulate marks for the demonstration of your relevant skills, knowledge, or understanding. They're not looking to deduct marks from a maximum on the basis of you making an error or missing something out. They are looking to award marks for what you have done up to the maximum allowable number of marks. So very much focused upon ensuring you can get the most marks for the good points that you'll write down. So that's our compare and discuss command words. So the next command word to look at is our describe command word. So for describe questions, candidates must make a number of relevant factual points, which may be characteristics and or features as appropriate to the question that's being asked. So if you're just giving a singular point about a particular concept, process, situation, element that you're being asked about, that's probably not going to be enough information. You need to be descriptive. So to be descriptive, you're going to need more than just a straightforward point. You're going to need to develop those points on, or have a number of straightforward points that are presented and linked together. So keeping it clear and concise, though, is important. And you get up to the total mark allocation of the questions. If the mark's out of 5, you can get up to five marks. You get 1 mark for each of the relevant factual point, but it can't be too short. You can't just name something and move on. You need to put that into a clear sentence, because it is a describe question. And then you've got 1 mark for further developing that point on, and that might include exemplification. So giving an example where and when that would be appropriate. So describe questions, you can have a good couple of sentences for each of the factual points you've got, and you're going to really try and draw out some information on the characteristics or the features. So making sure you're providing enough detail here with the described question is absolutely essential. Okay, the outline command word then. So for outline questions, candidates must make a number of brief statements appropriate to the question being asked. So this may include key facts, features, characteristics. So these are certainly shorter than our described question. We're just making sure we're giving a concise, clear statement outlining what the key points are for whatever's being asked. And again, for each accurate statement that we're producing, we're going to get a mark up to the maximum number of marks that are available. And then alongside that, we've got the justify command word here. And for the justify questions, you must give a good reason to support suggestions. So if you're making a suggestion or there's been a suggestion made in the question, then you have to give supporting reasons as to why that suggestion is a good idea. So you explain the reasons for it. Or it might be that you have to provide good reasons and justify why it's not a good idea. So you'd be giving reasons that go against the issue being raised in the question. And you can develop that on as well to potentially get additional marks. And looking at the wording of the question is going to need to be absolutely clear. So you're going to get 1 mark for each accurate justification, and then potentially another mark for developing that point onwards if that's what the question looks like it's asking for, up to the maximum number of points that are available for the question. So as I said before, all of these questions, they're marked positively. So if you've got a 6-mark question and you've made 4 good points, of which 2 of them you've developed on, then that might be the full 6 marks available there. But if you then go and add an additional point or 2, you're not going to be able to achieve yourself 8 marks. But by adding those additional points into your answer, it might just help if a couple of the other points aren't counted or aren't appropriate statements or justifications, then the marks can be picked up elsewhere. But that doesn't mean we should be writing everything we know and screeds of stuff. You've got to make sure it's tailored to the question, and you're demonstrating your key pieces of knowledge. So we'll look at some questions to see those words in action, but it's worth just going through the command words to make sure we're happy with that. So a little bit about this video then. Questions are going to be presented to you on screen, and all these questions have been taken from SQA past papers. You can see in the bottom left-hand corner which past paper it's come from. Pause the video, and you might actually find that while this video is 45 minutes long, actually the activity is going to take much longer than that, because you've got quite a few questions to work through. So it might be that you break this up into a couple of stages, but of course YouTube will hopefully remember where you got to in the video for when you come back. But do make sure at the appropriate points you take the opportunity to pause the video, get your pen and paper out, or if you're using digital exams, then get whichever platform you're going to be writing your exams in. And I think it's important to practice. So if you're going to be writing in the exam, do make sure in your practice that you're writing by hand, because all of that is good skill development and good preparation for the exam. Work through the question yourself, and you know what? Even if you don't know the answer, have a good go, have a guess. Even if it's a complete guess, it doesn't matter, because you are the only person who's going to see the work, and you can then mark it and make some notes as we go through it together. And whether a point's been developed enough, or whether you think you've got your justification quite right for your justified question, or whether you feel you've discussed enough or not, you'll be able to decide that. But it is about practice, and the more you practice, because you'll be reflecting on your practice, that will help you get better. So do press play after you've worked through it yourself to see what my thoughts are, and that will be us working through the question together. Of course, if there's something that's really not making sense to you, make sure you're going back to your teacher or the person you're working with for your course, and just have a chat with them and see if you can get a bit more input from them. So our very first practice question, then, it's got a bit of information up first, and I'm going to read the information for you. And of course, if you want to then read it yourself, do pause the video and have another look. But the mystery shopper, having booked a holiday online with a national travel agency, Alice had to pay the first instalment in person at the local branch. Waiting in a long queue, she gazed about the office, noticing how run down and shabby it seemed. The lighting was poor and the air felt stuffy and stale. There were boxes stacked high behind the staff desks and in front of the fire exit. Staff had a cups of coffee on their desks, and there was a puddle of spilt coffee in the middle of the floor. A small child, bored with waiting, was running around and suddenly tripped over some cables, causing a computer and customer files to fall off a desk. The staff member at the desk swore loudly and shouted at the child, resulting in an angry exchange with the child's mum. Other customers were upset by the argument, and one even filmed it on her phone. 15 minutes after entering, Alice was eventually served. She gave her booking reference number only to be informed that there was nothing on the computer system about her booking. Whilst the member of staff went to speak to their manager, Alice spent her time reading other customers' holidays bookings. On leaving the premises, Alice noticed the customer who had been filming was standing outside writing in a notebook. Ooh, interesting, interesting scenario there. So, mystery shoppers tend to be associated with retail outlets. However, given the growth in the service sector and the downturn in retail, this may be changing. Simon Brown is a lecturer in customer services and an advisor to a number of top companies. He says it's a very competitive market. Service providers need to use mystery shoppers to ensure that they are offering customers a high quality experience. Simon believes that organizations need to gather data from as many different sources as possible in order to shape policies and improve customers' experiences. So there's a lot of information to read through there. Of course, if you've got it printed out on the paper, then you could go through and underline things, you could highlight things. But it took me probably a couple of minutes to just read that information to you. Make sure you're taking those 2 or 3 minutes in the exam to fully read the scenario, fully read the context. It's very easy to kind of rush through and skim read it, but this is key information that you're going to be able to draw points out when you go to answer the question. So taking the time to be fully familiar with it and let it sink in a little bit is a good investment of your time. So do take time to do that. So our first set of practice questions, we've got a bit more information first, which is some tweets. This first tweet's from Mary Stewart. Just as well, I'm an honest person at ABC_travel. Was in your Aberdeen branch today, and a member of staff on the phone to a customer repeated their name, address, and credit card details out loud for everyone to hear. Hashtag GDPR ? ABC Travel replied, we can assure all customers that this was a unique event and the member of staff has been spoken to. All our staff have to undertake regular training on data security and confidentiality and are fully aware of the requirements of the GDPR. So our 3 questions then that we've got to answer around this scenario is the following questions are based on all the information provided and on knowledge and understanding you have gained while studying the course. First question, describe possible solutions to the health and safety issues identified in the information provided. So that's a describe question there, and we're describing health and safety issues and solutions to them. Justify the need for the travel agent to use other research methods to evaluate customer care. That question's worth 3 marks. And then we've got outlined 3 strategies that should be covered at the travel agent staff meeting to ensure compliance with the General Data Protection Regulations. So that's GDPR. So there's 3 questions. First question's worth 4 marks. Second question's worth 3 marks. Third question is worth 3 marks. So though that number of marks will give you a clue of how many points you should be making, you might want to go back and read through the scenario again, just in your own time, and then you'll want to have a bash at each of those questions. So I would say you'll be looking at 15 to 20 minutes in the exam to get through that, and taking that time is absolutely fine. So pause the video now and give that a go. Let's take a look then at this first question. Describe the possible solutions to the health and safety issues identified in the information provided. So the first thing to do there is picking out the health and safety issues that were given to us in the scenario, and then describing where the issue lies there and how we could go about having a solution. So fire exit needs to be immediately unblocked as it contravenes fire safety regulations, and that could result, of course, in the organisation being fined. So that's something that would need immediately sorted. Boxes need to be removed to create a clutter-free space. So a potential solution to clearing the boxes is buying filing cabinets or reducing the need of paper copies by making a digital copy and having good file management in place to solve that problem. Do not allow staff to have hot drinks at their desks because we've got a danger of spills on equipment or paperwork. I'd also suggest that there could also be dangers to customers and colleagues who are working there, because a spill of a hot drink on a child, for instance, would be disastrous. So a solution to that is communicating that staff aren't allowed hot drinks at their desks, and having maybe some yellow warning signs to alert staff or customers that they shouldn't have hot drinks in the premises or on the premises or within the customer facing area. Staff need to be told that they're responsible for cleaning up spills and keeping areas clean and tidy during the working day. And you have learnt about different communication methods on how organisations can let their employees know about this. So if you've got a clear message on health and safety that needs to be provided, then let's make sure we're providing that clear message to them. Cables should be rerouted away from passageways. They could be covered by mats, cable covers, cable tidies. They could install more plug points to prevent trailing cables, effectively undertaking anything that is going to allow them to have good cable management to remove the trip hazards, because that is the solution, is that we can remove the trip hazard. So giving a nice description on what the answer could look like there. Staff need to be trained in customer relations in order to prevent conflicts. So there was in the scenario the agitated lady because of her child, and then she was being sworn at. That's obviously not acceptable. That's a training issue. So making sure there's the right training in place is absolutely important for that. Ventilation issues, because there was a reference to it, to how it smelt and how the air seems stale. So that could be ventilation through air conditioning, opening the windows, opening the doors. I mean, these days we all know lots about ventilation, don't we? Because of COVID. So that's worth considering. And there was also a reference about the lighting as well. So poor lighting. Solution to that is either better bulbs, or better natural lighting by maybe opening blinds or reorganizing the layout to ensure that more light can be let in. So you're going to get 1 mark for each item that you've described, and then you'll be able to get an additional mark if you develop that on to an extended point, up to 4 marks. So you might make three descriptions and then develop one of those descriptions on to get yourself that 4th mark. So of course you need to make sure that you're not repeating yourself when you're expanding those. You are really trying to focus in and give distinct points to be able to get all 4 marks. Right, looking on to question 2 then. Justify the need for the travel agent to use other research methods to evaluate customer care. Well, the mystery shopper is, of course, only one viewpoint, so we need to be careful that it's not biased. So if you're taking that information from just one source, then you've definitely got the risk of bias. So using customer focus groups would allow for discussions from a range of viewpoints, and that could help provide in-depth discussion on current future products, ideas, developments, customer experience tweaks. Of course, with a customer focus group, you can get that clarification that can be sought if questions are misunderstood. And at that customer focus group, you can also get the customer to raise additional points for discussion. So potentially things that you haven't thought about. If you've given customers that safe space, they can come back up with their own feedback as well. Questionnaires could be sent out to a large number of customers after the event, in terms of they've booked something, then they get a feedback survey, and that's widely used, of course. Text messages, where potentially you're just asking for a rating out of 10, is required, and customers can just text that back. just so you can get some immediate feedback from them. Online questionnaires and text messaging, these can be targeted to customers via an email link or their text phone number. And because you're going to get that back quite quickly and in a digital form, results can then be analysed quickly through specialist software, and they can organisations can look for trends and make decisions on how they can make differences there. So loyalty cards can give quantifiable data regarding customer spending and shopping habits, potentially with booking holidays. They might not be doing as much booking as someone, or use their loyalty card as much as someone who's, say, shopping in a supermarket, but certainly worth considering. The cost of paying an agency for the mystery shopper, or the cost of holding focus groups, certainly needs to be considered, balanced against the speed of being able to gather information from customers. We've got opinions versus facts. So some customers will have very strong opinions, and strong opinions about what they think did happen when they were in store, but that might not be the true version of events. So making sure we're working with hard facts is also going to be important. And then finally, having a suggestion scheme or comments cards can allow for immediate action. So you're going to get 1 mark for a valid justification in terms of the need for the travel agent to use other research methods. So you might talk about why they're not going to just use the mystery shopper because of it being biased, and then more points available in terms of alternative methods that they could take. What other research methods could they use to evaluate their customer car? So you've got 1 mark available for each valid development point that you make. But try not to focus too much on the negativities of the mystery shopper. This is a focusing on other research methods. So what other research methods can they use? Justify why they'd be using those other research methods to get the marks that are available. Looking to question 3, where we're outlining 3 strategies that should be covered at the travel agent's staff meeting to ensure compliance with the General Data Protection Regulation, of course, GDPR. 3 marks available here. Staff shouldn't be repeating that confidential data or information when talking to customers on a phone. So we know that they were asked to repeat their personal details, including their credit card number. That's a big no-no. We need to also tell staff that they should take time between customers to tidy away any documents, because we know that some information was lying around this travel agent. Any notes that are taken when they're having initial consultations with customers, they should be destroyed immediately after use, or filed away securely when they're not in use. How do we keep information secure? The use of locked filing cabinets, for example, would be a solution to that, or storing it digitally using the correct software with the right security procedures as well, and potentially making backup copies if required. Customers should not be able to view the screen that staff members are working on, and if they can, then other customers' details should be minimized, or the computer should be locked if the staff member moves away from their desk, potentially having the screen switched off, or the use of screensavers. And of course, there's also privacy screens which are available, which mean the screen can only be viewed at when someone's looking directly at it. If someone's sat to the side, they won't be able to see what's going on the screen. Now, we've got a clear reference to here about the travel agent's staff meeting and actions that they're going to need to convey to ensure compliance with GDPR. So don't just make general points about GDPR. Make sure you've got clear strategies based upon issues that were raised in that scenario part of the question. So if you're not relating your answer to the scenario that you've been given, then you're really limiting your options and the number of marks you can get. You're going to get 1 mark for each point that you can make, and you can see there's certainly lots of points available. Okay, let's have a look at another question. Outline the ways in which an organization meets the requirements of the GDPR regulation, so the General Data Protection Regulation. It's worth 4 marks, so pause the video now give yourself 6 or 7 minutes to give this a go. Now, if you go and look this question up in the 2018 question paper, you'll see it says outline the ways in which an organisation meets the requirements of the Data Protection Act. Well, that's of course been updated to the General Data Protection Regulation, but broadly speaking, the idea behind both of the legislation was to protect people's data and ensure they've got clear rights. So there is lots of things you could outline here, and it's 4 marks, and you get 1 mark for each valid statement. Because it's an outline, you are getting marks for you outlining an aspect, no marks for developing your points on. So make sure you're being succinct and clear with the brief statements that you're making to be able to outline your answer. And you don't need any examples here. It is just literally looking for facts about GDPR. So organisations should be registered with the governments. They've of course got to make sure that visitors have limited access to data to ensure data is being kept secure. Ensure staff question people who they don't recognise if they're within a area where there is secure data. If they've got cabinets with sensitive data in them, they should be kept locked. Only certain people should have access to data or the hierarchical systems that are available. Keeping a record of who accesses which files, and if that's physical filing cabinets, who's going into those filing cabinets. If data is no longer required or it's not relevant, then it needs to be securely destroyed. So that could be shredding or through a company that destroys data or hard disks. Depending on where the data is being stored, of course. Look through files on a regular basis, and if data still needs to be retained, then make sure that's identified and retained. Otherwise, it should be securely destroyed. Someone should be responsible for that monitoring of the data which is being held, and only the minimum amount of information that is required to be held should be held. We shouldn't be keeping hold of other information without any good reason. Of course, there should be a privacy notice that's available telling customers on what data is being gathered and how it will be processed. People have a right to be able to access their data under subject access requests. So making sure there's clear processes in place and there's someone responsible for making sure that happens. In terms of where data is, making sure if it's being transferred outside the European Union, specific permission for that has been sought from the people whose data it is. And of course, staff training. Training is always a good fallback. Staff training on the principles of data protection also absolutely essential. So lots of really good points available to make. You're just making succinct, brief statements outlining the way in which an organisation can meet the requirements of the GDPR. No examples required, and no need either to develop any points on. Looking at our next practice question then, discuss the use of an e-diary when organising meetings. So this is a discuss question. It's worth 4 marks. So we're going to make 2 or 3 points and make sure we've looked to develop them on to form a discussion. 7-8 minutes. Pause the video now. Okay, so discuss the use of an e-diary when organising meetings. What could our answer look like here? Well, you're going to get 1 point for each valid discussion point, and then there's going to be a potential of a second mark if that mark has been developed on. But I think you can really get 4 clear points here. Avoid your repetition though, and make sure you are referencing the types of things we've got here as examples. I wouldn't be accepting things like technical issues or not having internet access or staff not looking at their e-diaries. This is about the features of an e-diary which aid the organisation of meetings. So automatic invites being sent out to all attendees at the same time, and they can give an instant acceptance or decline of a meeting. So the speed there that operates at is very good. E-diaries can also be set to automatically have reoccurring meetings. So this is where they repeat on certain days or certain dates, and that can be in the e-diary of the organizer as well as the e-diary of those who are invited. Making sure we can set reminders to prompt people in advance of meetings. And if there's a reminder that's been set, then that will reduce the chance of people not turning up, that non-attendance issue that can sometimes be a problem with meetings. Of course, having an e-diary can mean that it's available on the network or synchronized with other diaries to check availability. So before a date is picked, you can check that they would be available for then. There's now some functionality which automatically allows a scheduling assistant to look at the diaries and pick the best time. And so this saves time because you're not having to contact people individually. And it also alerts them if there's going to be some kind of double booking. Meeting documentation, like the agenda, for example, can be attached and sent to the meeting invite, which means attendees are better prepared and informed, and they're prepared to make decisions in the meeting. You could, of course, quickly search through appointments and contacts when preparing for a meeting to be able to get the right people invited. And there's also the facility to have an inbuilt to-do list to allow for meeting tasks to be prioritized. And there's lots of functionality there. So talking about the functionality of an e-diary and why it's discussing why it's helpful or a good aid when organizing meetings is the key there to getting the marks. Turning to our next question, then, we want to justify the importance of effective leadership with a team. It's a 4-mark question, so 7 or 8 minutes. You're justifying, so you've got to give reasons why it's a good thing to have effective leadership within a team. So what are the positive things there? So focus in upon those. Pause the video now. So in answering our justify the importance of effective leadership with a team question, there's 1 mark available for each justification that you make, with additional marks available for developing that point on if you manage to do that appropriately. And of course, we need to make sure that a team has clear direction, and that clear direction provided by the effective leadership can make a team more productive to ensure deadlines are met. The leader can rally the team to increase motivation. Of course, increasing motivation can then lead to better output or an increased output. Effective delegation can empower employees. And there's certainly some strengths and weaknesses to knowing about team members to make sure that the right effective delegation is happening. So you might be able to make a for or against point there, because obviously, if you know someone is weak in something and the leadership makes a mistake there, then of course that could have a negative impact upon the team. They should hopefully lead by example and improve the skill set of employees, and that gives them the opportunity to develop talent for internal promotion. If we're building people's skill sets, having effective leadership will also mean that supervision and support means that deadlines are more likely to be met. Of course, the improved communication can lead to better decision making. Better support in a team leads to a reduction in stress. So a good, effective leader or leadership team should be doing that. And clear communication in a team allows a dialogue to develop understanding of tasks. And if people understand each other's tasks, then they're easier to cover each other. For example, if there's absence within a team, and effective leadership would be able to manage and ensure that can happen. So I think you approach this question from a positive point of view, because effective leadership does have lots of positive impacts on a team. Of course, if you approach that from a negative point of view, because you're just justifying it, so you could say if there was ineffective leadership, then likely you still pick up some marks. But I think for this question, you really want to have a positive spin upon things. Looking now at our next practice question, an organisation has changed its fire evacuation policy. Discuss the methods of communication that could be used to inform employees. So you're discussing methods of communication, and we are referring to a fire evacuation policy, and we're trying to inform all our employees there. 6-mark questions. So it's a discussion. It's looking for points that are going to be well developed and explained. So I'd give yourself a good 10 minutes to have a go at answering this question. Okay, looking then at the answer for an organisation has changed its fire evacuation policy, discuss the methods of communication that can be used to inform employees. Well, of course, there's different methods of communication. So we've got electronic communication, we've got written communication, and face-to-face or oral communication. So making sure you've got an awareness of those different types of communication methods, and then going into the detail about how that communication method could be used to inform employees. So within electronic communication, something could be published on the intranet, for example, that internal system with the latest company policy and procedures. Information and presentations could be stored online, potentially, and staff access them when it suits them, and the organization might wish to monitor who is accessing it. And of course, email. It might be a case of sending out a group email or an email newsletter or bulletin containing that information. And then there's obviously proof that the email has been sent and read. Looking at the written communication, notice boards, posters, memos, potentially sending letters even to the employees about the fire evacuation policy could all be effective methods of communication. And then equally, if there's team meetings happening or there's managers going around and providing oral communication face to face, then that's an additional way to be able to share the key message. Now, up to 5 marks could be awarded for describing any one method, but you'd be looking at having a 4 or 5 really clear, valid descriptions, and then developing those points on to give yourself your additional development point. Of course, I wouldn't be accepting that you'd be having informal communications on, say, social media or WhatsApp, or having fire drills or role plays, because this is communicating really important information, which we know is set down by legislation. So it's those formal methods of communication that we'll be looking for here, potentially talking about training, but I guess you need to be really clear how that method of communication is shaping up. Okay, our final question then, before we wrap up our session, is justify the need to send out an agenda in advance of a meeting. It's a 4-mark question, so give yourself 7 or 8 minutes to again justify, so we know what justification needs to look like. The need to send out an agenda in advance of a meeting. Pause the video now. So looking then at the answer to justify the need to set out an agenda in advance of the meeting, well, it's of course a legal requirement if it's a PLC to send out advance notice of formal meetings. It will also allow members of the meeting to decide if they need to attend. Is this a relevant discussion that they wish to take part in? Members can prepare their thoughts and information. They might need to research topics so they feel fully briefed. You'd also want to allow members to prepare resources. Members will need to know if they're going to have a vote and what that vote might look like. And of course, they'll also be able to gauge how long a meeting is likely to take based upon the information that's being provided. And if members feel there should be additional information discussed at the meeting, then they've also got that ability to be able to alert the chair and get those items added. 1 mark for each justification. If you're developing it on sufficiently, then there'll be a 2nd mark available. I'd be looking at making 3 or 4 points there and developing them on as well, just to make sure you've got all your bases covered. Right, all that's left for me to do is to say thank you very much for joining me on this preparation video. This has been focused on the higher admin and IT course, and we've gone through a number of past papers. But as I said at the start of this video, this is very much a team effort where you're working in partnership with your teachers or the person responsible for your course to best prepare yourself for the qualification. So doing lots of past paper questions, but also making sure you're getting stuck into that theory and you're being able to recall from memory all of the bits of information, absolutely important, and making sure you're studying that exam paper for the command words and also the key bits of information that are in the question to help you do the best that you can do when you get into the exam. So all that's left for me to do is to wish you the very best of luck, and thank you very much for joining me. Goodbye.